Eden, can you hear me? Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. Cliff Conrad is my name. I happen to be what is called the new faculty director of WISCAPE, and we're delighted to have you here joining us today. Before we begin, I would like to mention one thing. We're having a WISCAPE discussion of Matthew Hoover's new book, which is quite interesting, called Beyond the Skills Gap, on December 9th at noon. Flyers for that are on the table, I believe. We should have them. Now it's a pleasure to welcome William P. Tischler, otherwise known as Bill Tischler, and Mary Rouse, to take a look at the past, present, and the future of UW-Madison's historic red gym. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you here today. I don't know if you know this or not, but in the early 1990s, about 25 years ago, Bill and Mary were very, very instrumental in making a video to raise money for the historic preservation of the red gym and armory for student services. And they got a very generous gift from John Cashier Mortgage. The building, as many of you know, was renovated and opened in 1998. And it's a marvelous, marvelous building, as many of us know. In fact, actually in 1993, it was designated an historic landmark, a national historic landmark. Let me just say a couple brief things about Mary and Bill, if I could. Mary is described in many ways. Not only is she a leader, she's also a teacher. She had to teach, of course, with yours truly about 19 years ago, and somehow she endured. But among other things, she's also been a dean here for many years, a spouse, a mother, a grandmother. She's been very civic engaged, otherwise known, AKA, as an activist for many years, if I may take the liberty of saying so, dedicated to community service. She did retire, as many of you know, from director of the Mortgage Center in 2005, where she had actually directed it from 1999 or thereabouts to 2005, and she had been instrumental back in 1994 in creating the beloved Mortgage Center, for which we owe her a great debt. She's held lots of positions on campus, most notably including Dean of Students from 1987 to 2000. And she was a revered Dean of Students, I might add. I'm not being gratuitous. I'm from North Dakota. People thought the world of her among many, many others, and did a wonderful job in cultivating a culture at the university that was very, very welcoming and opening and supportive of students of very, very diverse backgrounds. Bill Tischler is senior media specialist, as many of you know, at UW-Madison. He's officially over in continuing studies. He's been actually, for 25 years now, a quarter of a century roughly, developing distance education courses that use video as the primary vehicle for delivery of content. He is a graduate of UW-Madison circa 1991 and did graduate work in an institution called Dartmouth College for some time. Somewhat to my pleasant surprise, he's the fourth generation. We have two generations here today at least. And his family on his mom's side to attend college at UW-Madison. He's also been an honorary affiliate and been a very much a contributor to WISCAPE over the last few years. In short, we're delighted to have both of these individuals with us today, both of whom have made a great difference on this wonderful public university where we are housed here today. So, Mary and Bill, we look forward to your comments.
Welcome, and thanks for coming to hear our presentation. It has been my good fortune, as Cliff said, to spend almost 50 years on campus and student and academic affairs. Many of you know that my favorite building is the Armory and Gymnasium, better known as the old Red Gym. We are coming into the future through the past today, and that's a booklet that we had put together a number of years ago, because we really are coming into the present and future through the past. The next slide. This is a picture from a postcard, 1894. We think that that's exactly the way the building looked when it opened. Okay. It is an iconic and unique structure right in the heart of the campus. With the history beginning in 1894, they had a 2-day celebration, a gala opening. The cost was, you ready for this? $122,058.48 plus $5,657.43 for athletic equipment. For 122 years, it has been a hub of activity, a place of teaching, learning, and a myriad of campus and community activities and programs for students, faculty, staff, and visitors. In its early years, the Red Gym achieved wider significance as it became a center for social, civic, and political activity beyond the university, in addition to serving the athletic, military, and assembly uses for which it was built. These are my own words from a report that you'll hear more about in a minute, the Historic Structure Report. From the beginning, our urban fortress was designed for many uses, including a gymnasium, at that time reported as the largest gymnasium in the West. This was the West in those days. So we're now going to show you some examples of the many uses. We'll start with the military drills, men learning small engine repair, sleeping on cots on the second floor. So this is World War I. Next, we're going to go to the UW men's basketball games. Proms were held there until 1916. Governor Robert M. Fighting Bob La Follette and the state Republican conventions of 1902 and 1904. And then some of you may remember that registration was held there for almost 60 years. I could tell you, registration was on the second floor where the basketball games were played. And I was an assistant dean at that time, and I used to run down to the Red Gym and run the registration forms upstairs for the students who were using wheelchairs. And of course, there was no elevator at that time. Okay, Bill, did we miss, how are we doing? Did we miss the pool area, okay, and what I call the pool gate scandal. When women started swimming with the men, even though a sign had long been posted on the side of the pool, it read, "No swimming suits allowed." So I'm sure there was a scandal there that was properly investigated. And let's see, the last one is a couple, student couple, just having gotten married. So you can see how many different uses the gym had. Unfortunately, we do not have a picture of the 30 women who performed a gymnastics exhibition at the close of the school year in 1896. However, we do have a written account of it from the Wisconsin State Journal, which reported the event as, and I quote, "the beginning of no one can tell what in the way of female athletics at Wisconsin University." Okay, next one, Bill. When I became Dean of Students in the fall of 1987, Donna Shalala had been named our Chancellor and assumed this position in January of 1988. The Board of Regents had given her a mandate to strengthen and improve undergraduate education. Just a few months prior to her arrival, I had already accepted the Dean's position. Fortunately, I too had a parallel agenda to improve and strengthen support services to and for students, especially those students new to the campus. I had always wanted our students to play an even greater role in campus and community life. So a few months prior to the Chancellor's move here, she and I had several conversations about her mandate and my agenda. It included solving the space shortages for student activities and programs. She moved quickly to appoint Professor Bruce Murray, hello Bruce, and myself to chair a committee to come up with a plan to use the old red gym. This was one of her many initiatives. The use of the building had declined dramatically and it had fallen into disrepair in addition to being firebombed in 1970 and never repaired. The area where the Mortgage Center for Public Service is now located looked like the inside of your backyard charcoal pit. About 70 people a day used the building. Cats were living in the basement.
Yeah, and actually also raccoons I found in the basement as well when we were doing the filming there. It scared the heck out of me. So.
And the roof and the windows were leaking. The committee articulated twin goals: historic preservation and adaptive use of the old red gym. Together with many people, because I never work alone, you can't get anything done by yourself, I led and coordinated this project for 10 years from start to finish, 1988 to 1998. You cannot preserve and maintain an historic property unless you can find a suitable adaptive use and a budget to support it. Again, many people assisted me in moving the project forward. It was not easy. Some of you know how hard indeed it was. One person was Bill Tischler, my co-presenter, and today he had just graduated a couple years before that and offered to create a short video called This Old Red Gym with Professor Stan Schultz, our American urban historian. Unfortunately, Stan planned to come, but he is ill today. The purpose of the video was to kindle interest in the project and assist with fundraising.
Yeah, let me show you. I have no way to better introduce this, but I will testify that what Cliff said, I was a student here when Mary was Dean of Students. So, and I was one of the. So when I was had the opportunity to work with her on this video, it was quite an honor. I'll just, yeah, nothing to prepare you for this one. It was,
So this is a 5-minute the video that he made, which is actually 15 minutes long.
and I like people. Everybody here has seen this old house, correct? All right. Hello, welcome to This Old Red Gym. I'm your host, William Tischler. On today's program, we're going to be talking with Dean of Students, Mary Rouse, adaptive use plan for restoring Old Red Gym. But first, UW history professor Stanley Schultz is standing by to give us a history lesson on this unique structure. We've got a great show for you today, so stick around. Hello, Professor Schultz.
Hi, Bill.
So what can you tell us about this old building?
Well, for a building approaching nearly 100 years of age, it's in remarkably good condition. There are, however, a number of problems that need to be addressed. Earlier today, our camera crew and I examined the whole structure and found only minor damage. Some of the problems result from the natural deterioration used in building materials. Others result from the lack of appropriate maintenance.
I see. But despite all the problems, I think it's still possible to fix it up?
Oh, definitely, Bill.
Well, great. Let's take a look inside then.
Sure, let's go.
So what makes this building so unique?
Well, Bill, it combined in innovative and distinctive ways both an armory and a gymnasium. Two facilities that at the time many people used as major yardsticks by which to measure a university's prestige and its attractiveness for potential students. You know, this is the 4th floor gymnasium, Bill.
This looks like it's been here for quite some time.
Quite some time. You know, somewhat connected to the need for armories was the need for gymnasiums to get students physically fit for any military activity. You know, Bill, people used to believe that being physically fit and mentally able were inseparable qualities.
imagine that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Philadelphia, I have to take a hike up Bascom Hill for meeting with the dean, so if you'll excuse me.
Happy walking, Bill. Despite some alterations and improvements made during the 1930s and the 1940s, by the early 1950s, talks of demolishing the armory and gymnasium were well underway. Those plans, however, never came to fruition. By the late 1960s, with various university groups vying increasingly for limited space on campus, talks about demolishing the old Red Gym came to an abrupt halt. Unfortunately, just as the building was being saved from the Wreckers Ball, it was damaged by quite a different force. Arsonists, upset with the presence of ROTC, firebombed the building on the morning of January 2nd, 1970. The flames caused very severe damage to the southeast tower of the building, which, ironically, was not home to ROTC, but to the Water Management Resources Program. Whatever the damage, the saddest thing was that the university did not deem it necessary to restore the damaged areas.
Now, what will this space be used for then?
This is where we will welcome people and give them information and directions, teach them how the university works, Bill. This will be our Campus Assistance and Visitor Center. Right now you can see it's a handyman special in very bad need of repair, and originally it was beautiful space. It was the artillery hall for the ROTC students, and guns and ammunition ringed the walls of this space, which was all open. There were none of these partitions. It was a huge, beautiful space with lots and lots of light, and we will put it back exactly the way it was, except that we'll be using it to welcome people instead of for military exercises. Bill, as a matter of fact, this is where our tours for prospective students and their families and our information about the university will originate from. In fact, we will open up the whole back of the building so that you can look through to the lake, and we will have many displays of different departments and programs and activities that are available throughout the university.
Now, what about the tiles here, the iron columns?
Okay. In keeping with the principles of historic preservation, we're going to keep as much as we possibly can, and all of this will remain just as it is now, minus the pool. You won't be able to go swimming here. Bill, we're walking up the most famous stairway in the university for 55 years until the mid-'80s. This is the stairway that all our students had to use to get to the second floor to register for their classes.
Well, now we have the phone registration, so there's no longer a need for a space like this.
That's absolutely true, and they're missing this beautiful view of the second floor.
This is impressive. Now, what will this space be used for?
Although it's been some 90 years since the celebrated Robert M. La Follette accepted the Republican nomination for governor, we can still make the great girders of this old Red Gym vibrate to their farthest limit.
Well, that's all the time we have left for this edition of This Old Red Gym. Next time we'll be checking back on the progress of this renovation. So until then, we'll see you on This Old Red Gym.
You want to see the whole thing, it's available. 15 minutes. Well, we had fun doing that, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
So, Bill, I've got a question for you. Why were armories built in cities and at land-grant colleges across the country?
Yeah, it really goes back to the Morrill Act of 1862 when the university received a land grant status, and the part of that included in both the creation of the College of Ag as well as the mechanical arts, the old building that we're actually in right now. There also was compulsory military training, and that's kind of what they needed a space to conduct these drills. As the student population on campus continued to increase, there's increasingly more and more need for a space. But it's really kind of the urban unrest, the labor unrest that was going on, especially nearby here with like the Haymarket Square riot or the Milwaukee strike just the following day in 1886 that kind of created this fear in our society that we needed to have an armory, places where the militia can gather, and also to where, as we saw in the video, where the guns could be stored. Also, it was the waves of immigration that were coming in. People were afraid that these new immigrants would kind of rise up and attack our cities. Now, nothing like that ever happened here in Madison, especially on Langdon Street. Until probably the Vietnam era, and actually we saw in the video here when the building was firebombed in 1970 in January, the New Year's bombers. As Stan mentioned in the video, ironically they bombed the southeast corner, which was the Water Resource Management Center, and they didn't damage all the ROTC buildings that were in the back. Well, I should also add too is that it was the second Morrill Act in 1890 that actually provided the funding for the Red Gym, and that I think that was important, since it was also when African Americans were part of the stipulation for that act was African Americans would be accepted into our land grant institutions. So I think it's really, I think, symbolic that the building still exists today. The funds that were used to create it are also being used for some of the same purposes housed in the building today.
So Bill, tell us briefly about the Bascom Hill Historic District, and is the Red Gym included?
And probably, given the name here, probably some people here in the audience are confused. I'm not the landscape architect who's the expert in historic preservation, but I'm hoping over the years some of this has actually rubbed off on me. This is the Bascom Hill Historic District was established in 1974, and it includes many well-known buildings: North Hall, Bascom, South Hall, but they also included Science Hall as well as the Red Gym. They expanded the borders of the space. Here's a map from the nomination packet that was put together, and you can see there that it's not only the College Hill, but it also stretches down to where the Red Gym is. And I should also point out too that the boundaries stretch down and covers the Elving Arts Center and the George Mossey building, Humanities buildings. All those were buildings that were identified as being historically significant for the Madison campus.
So Bill, how many properties are on the state and national registers of historic places in our country?
I guess there's over 90,000 places in the country that include both buildings, districts, different sites. And I have a question. The historic structure report, I guess if you could talk about that, actually, I guess I gave away my question, but is the Red Gym part of that?
This is an historic structures report, and it was the first one ever completed on a state-owned property in Wisconsin. It was initiated in 1991, and it cost $190,000. An historic structure report provides documentary, graphic, and physical information about a property's history and existing condition. Broadly recognized as an effective part of preservation planning, and historic structure report also addresses the management or owner goals for the use or adaptive use of the property. Here's the conclusion from this 1991 report. The Armory and Gymnasium was constructed of high-quality materials with well-conceived details, carefully restored and adapted for new use as a gateway to the university. It can continue to serve a pivotal role in the campus in the city of Madison well into the 21st century. So, Bill, of the 85 or 90,000 properties on the national and state historic registers, how many of them enjoy this special elite status and are designated as national historic landmarks?
About 2,500. Now, and also of those 2,500, 43 are listed here in Wisconsin. Actually, one just became a national landmark just last Friday, the Man Mounds out in South County. Of those 43, 4 of them exist here on the Madison campus, and that's the North Hall we saw, the Dairy Barn, Science Hall, and the Red Gym.
And I just want to say, an extremely smart, talented architectural historian, Beth Miller, is not with us today, but she wrote the nominations for both Science Hall and the Old Red Gym. Her spouse, where are you, Cliff? And where's Louis? Anyway, tell her that we mentioned her for sure. It's great, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess, Mayor, you remember that when the building was nominated for National Historic Landmark status?
November 4th, 1993, and that's, you got the plaque, there's the plaque.
Yeah.
It's a very big deal, very, very big deal.
Yeah, and I guess I have another question for you about what UW alum philanthropist played water polo in the Old Red Gym, returned with his checkbook along with his spouse, and many years later helped this project forward.
You know who we're talking about, right?
Oh, sorry. There we go.
There we go. John and Tasha Mortgage, and they are, if you know them, they are just fabulous people. Just couldn't be nicer, smarter, or richer. So they gave the foundation 2 major gifts, one for the bricks and mortar for the historic preservation, and the other to expand our public service programs, which of course is now the Mortgage Center for Public Service, established in 1994 and moved into the gym in '98. So Bill, you got another question for me?
Yeah, a question about well, actually, we didn't see the questions here, but I guess the celebration, the 100th anniversary of the Red Gym. I guess what year, and can you maybe tell us a little about that?
Well, it was 1994 in May, 100th anniversary, and I'm gonna call the Red Gym a she for right now. So when she turned 100, she celebrated her longevity and reflected on how happy she was not to have been torn down. She went on to quote James Tischler, a well-known new urbanist, from his book titled The Geography of Nowhere. He defines a sense of place in the following way, and I'm quoting from his book: the idea that people and things exist in some sort of continuity, that we belong to the world physically and chronologically, and that we know where we are. And boy, when you see that Red Gym, you know where you are, right? No mistake about it.
I guess the question is, can you tell us about how the, how's the Red Gym being used today? Who are the occupants? What are the programs housed there?
Sure. Even though the historic preservation and adaptive use of the old Red Gym was only completed 18 years ago, the programs and services have changed some. For example, the Campus Information and Visitors Services is now located in the New Union South. The undergraduate admissions office is now located on the corner of West Johnson and Lake Street. That being said, today the Red Gym is used by hundreds of students, student organizations, faculty, staff, community members, alumni, and visitors every year. Programs and services located there foster interaction and connection among our increasingly diverse and talented student body. So it's home to a number of programs which you'll see in just a minute. In addition, there are regular blood drives. The Peace Corps recruiters hold office hours there. Anyway, it's a very busy place, and the Badger volunteers, 700 of them, get in-service training and orientation there. So, next slide, the current programs.
Here you
Okay. Again, you could just take a look. There are a number of programs that some you're familiar with and some probably not. The second floor, we can just zip to that. And the third floor. Okay. And the next slide, please. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is a photograph I just took a couple of days ago, and I just wanted to I guess the photograph says it all. And what I want to say is, the early work, getting the building on the Baskin Hill District, getting it put on National Register for Historic Landmarks, this put the Red Gym on the path for permanent preservation. And I have, like I said before, I'm confused everybody here by being just one of two William Tischlers in the room. My wife also named my youngest son William Tischler, and I was doing the math, and the buildings, by all accounts, will be around to celebrate its 200th anniversary. And if all goes well, another William Tischler will be there at the age of 83. When he was doing well. So.
Next slide. In closing, I have so many people to thank for bringing this project forward that the tour of the building would be delayed by a couple of hours if I named all of them. So I direct you to read the back page of the excellent booklet prepared by John Hoover. John Hoover's right here with us today. In 1994, he then revised it for the grand reopening in 1999. You will find all their names there. He worked in the news service at the time, and there's no question in my mind but that his work was persuasive to John and Tasha Mortgage. It came back from the printers the day before Don Gray from the UW Foundation and I flew out to visit the Mortgages at their home in the Portola Valley, California, to ask them for the two gifts I mentioned. And this, of course, was on behalf of Chancellor David Ward. The booklet is now out of print, but I have a few extra copies you may take. Great credit goes to our student government, called the Wisconsin Student Association at that time. From the outset, they supported the project and signed on as partners. So there you have it. We're going to go to questions now. Questions? Stories, questions? Stu?
I have two questions. First is, in the early 60s, Fred Harvey Harrington and Kurt Wendt were so committed to tearing the building down. It was the lower campus development plan had a guest house and faculty lounge there, 8, 9, 10 stories. It was an adopted plan, maintained that way for several years. Then the students said, hey, that's our gym, you can't tear it down. Did there come a point when the lower campus development plan was actually formally amended to remove the demolition from that plan, or did it just never happen? That's the first question. Related to that is, in reading the contemporary accounts, not only was the administration committed to tearing it down, but I see descriptions of it from 65, 66, 67, talking about, the eyesore, that the campus itself considered it an eyesore. At what point did that attitude towards the building change?
Would you go ahead?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. I know looking back that, at different points in history, when the Wisconsin Center was being put up, there was discussion about tearing the Red Gym down at that point. That was around the 1950s. But I think actually what the answer would be is the student population just kept growing. We just didn't have the space to house everyone.
My answer is that it just never happened. There were this plan and that plan, but they never were executed, and it just, continued to deteriorate for obviously a very long time. So there you have it. Other questions, comments, stories? Yes.
In addition to the Mortgages gifts to rehab the building, were student segregated fees used to support the rehab?
No, there was no segregated student fees. The state, the whole project was about $14 million, and the mortgage contribution was about half of that, and the state the other half. Although the state, because they wanted this project to go away, kept raising the bar in terms of how much money you had to bring in. In fact, there's another very generous benefactor right here in the room. I'm not going to call him out or anything, but we had a number of people besides the mortgages that gave, donations between $5,000 and $25,000. Yes.
I can distinctly remember going up those steps to complete the registration process. That was a freshman. And you got an IBM card and tore off one of the ends as your receipt. Well, I was rummaging through some of my files a few days ago and found that receipt. And you know how much tuition was that? $75.
Well, I want to say something about those stairs, because the reason they were built as wide as they are was so that 4 male students in military uniforms could walk up the stairs together at the same time. So it's quite a staircase. Steve.
Well, there are several anecdotes that I can remember from my association with the project, which I think are worth repeating. One, the admissions office, when they sort of jokingly said we should leave the pool and we should rename it the applicant pool. I was like that. The other thing that related to the pool was in the fundraising period, we often gave tours to groups of alums who wanted to see and sort of renew their memory of the building. And there was always a lot of gentlemen who would come up to me. They were probably the age I am now, but at that time they seemed older. And they'd come and whisper in my ear and say, I swam nude in that pool. There was a point when I was tempted to say something, if each of you who swam nude in the pool would give me $1, we would all we would reach our goal.
There are many urban legends about the Red Gym. This is a little off color, so please forgive me. The story is that a male from a country where they wore turbans regularly, so an international student here wearing a turban, loved to swim in the pool, and he swam every day with his turban. And one day he came to swim, and he didn't realize that the pool had been drained for cleaning, and so he dove in, and it was his turban that saved his life. And if you believe that. Bruce.
Mary, I remember one of our considerations in the committee was because so much of the interior structure was going to be removed, was there sufficient structural integrity to sustain this old building? And the engineers did study it and determined that in spite of its age, it was very structurally capable of sustaining the changes that were being recommended.
And
that was a very important consideration.
Just to pick up on that idea, we actually had a grant from the Getty Foundation. And this is kind of a fun story. The Getty Foundation has as one of its purposes the restoration of historic buildings throughout the world, actually. And it was a 3-level grant, as I remember. It was a $50,000 first level, $250,000, and then $500,000. And I somehow, I don't even remember, but I discovered this and I thought, well, if we could get all of that $800,000, that would make a big dent in our budget. And so we applied. The first $50,000 grant was to study that structure and why it had survived so well. Come to find out that there are actually 2 walls. There's the exterior wall and a structural wall with a separation between the brick and the structural wall. And that's where the water, over the ages, water is what does most damage to buildings. Well, here was a place for the water to go. And so we applied for this grant, and we actually got the $50,000 grant to study this phenomenon. And the architects and the engineers brought in a sophisticated X-ray equipment, and they put small holes, they could see vast expanses of this interior. And the report was written and submitted and accepted by the Getty Foundation, and I was thrilled with this. And thought, well, now we're on our way to get the $250,000. And when you get a grant, you're assigned a representative at the foundation who you send your reports to and progress and so on. And so I called him and said, well, you know, we're glad that you've received this $50,000, that we've received this $50,000 and that you're happy with the results. How do we apply for the $250,000 grant? And he said, don't bother. I said, why? I mean, everything we've done so far has been just what you asked for. He says, well, there's for this round of Getty grants, there's a couple of other grant applications. I said, okay. He said, yeah, you're competing with Charlemagne's Chapel. Needless to say, we packed our bags and came.
I was going to mention just briefly that my own academic background is Latin and Greek. I have an undergraduate degree in classics, and I have a graduate degree from the University of Michigan in ancient Greek language and literature. And but I couldn't get a job, so in the student services. And you know, you learn, of course, when you study archaeology, that adaptive use is very common. Greek temples became Christian churches, and chicken markets, and all kinds of things. And so, you know, in my view, this isn't the most beautiful building in the world. I'm not going to make that argument, but it's ours, and it's part of that wonderful braid of history. And so I love it, and I respect it. And the important thing, the most important thing, is that the building was really on its way to just falling completely apart. And so, again, thanks to many of us on the team, we were able to update it and retrofit it for the 21st century. Yes?
I want to throw in one quick thing that Steve mentioned. When I was kind of looking back at all the old footage and photographs that I had started accumulating back 23 years ago, I think I actually have footage of them actually drilling into doing the survey there. So, but one thing, just like the Red Gym, a lot of the stuff that I was starting to digitize is actually 23-year-old videotapes and photographs. So one of the things I'm going to be probably doing from this point forward is starting to archive and preserve just the volume of material that I've been so busy recording over the years and digitizing those and starting to place in the archive. So,
The question.
This has speaking to the architectural and the structural integrity of the armory or the Red Gym, is that the designer firm was Alan Conover and Porter. And Alan Conover was a very fine engineer and used steel early in construction, and he is responsible for the Red Gym and Science Hall. And I think that one of the reasons both those buildings are so structurally strong is that he did a really fine job of engineering.
Indeed, in fact, there was an engineer from our College of Engineering by the name of Storm Bull. That was his real name. And so he was the person that did the HVAC, heating and cooling. Didn't work very well, but anyway, he did. And so when we were working on retrofitting the building, the engineers and architects thought, well, you're going to have to maybe even have a separate building to accommodate all the pipes and so forth for a modern HVAC. It turns out that Professor Storm Bull and Conover and Porter had put in all the ductwork already that was needed for a 21st century HVAC system. Isn't that amazing? They were way, way ahead of their time as this envelope construction, the double wall construction. Yes, a couple more questions, and then we're going to take a tour. Back here?
I'm a little curious today about the staircase that goes up to the third floor, but not to the entire third floor, and what that process was like in the renovation. Because now the elevator will go up to the C-Fly and that part of the third floor, but where was that? Where did that come from?
The staircase Bob, maybe you can help me. The staircase always went up to the upper gymnasium, always did. And then there was a track that ran just above where the basketball courts were. So I don't know whether that's been closed off. I haven't walked that staircase myself in quite a few years. Bob, where's Bob?
Over here. I think it's only used for exiting, not necessarily going up and entering the third floor, but more as an emergency exit. It should still be there.
Yeah, and I know it's still there, but in the renovation of it, there must have been some decision to not make that like one cohesive level of space. I find it interesting that you can only access it
Right.
through the elevator.
It is interesting the way they divided up the circulation in that building with just the main staircase only going to the second floor and then stopping. Then you have to switch over and go up the other staircase to get up to the third floor.
Part of the design of it as an armory, they wanted to limit access to the building too, in case it ever got stormed and attacked. So, and that's where, we saw the pictures. That's where all the dances, sporting events were. So they needed access to the second floor, but they didn't want to have too much access, going into the upper floors. That's where their shooting range was.
Let's take just one more question and then, I can't turn you down if you want to ask.
Yeah.
I heard an unusual story about Charles Lindbergh at the old Red Gym when he was a student here. Is that really true?
The story is that he was almost suspended from shooting incendiary bullets down from one of the turrets into a leaf pile. I don't think he was suspended. I don't think he ever graduated though.
I don't think you ever graduated. Okay, so a famous philosopher said that after he worked on his attention span for 25 years, he finally got it up to 3 minutes. And you've been listening a lot longer than that, and we appreciate that and appreciate the questions. We are going to take anyone who's interested on building tours, and we think that there shouldn't be more than 6 people in any one group, and we have several people that can be tour guides. So if you want to take a tour, stay and we'll get it organized. And again, thank you very much for all your support and help. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
If you want to go to tour, stay.
Anybody who wants to go on a